Howdy, my name is Bailey Gruber, and I'm a graduate student in the Department of Agricultural Leadership, Education, and Communications from Texas A&M University. Today, I am here to talk about the importance of adopting leadership in our educational systems. Our lesson objective today is to understand why leadership programs and resources are fundamental to our educational systems. In order to achieve this objective, we will go over a few findings and definitions from Everett Rogers, who is one of the founding fathers of the research behind innovation technologies. The main resources from Dr. Rogers comes from his book Diffusion of Innovations, the 5th edition. We will also be hearing from students and professionals in the educational and leadership fields to really hone down on our objective. I wanted to provide y'all with a handout that you can print to follow along with this presentation or pass out to those who you may be showing this video to. Please take a second to scan this QR code to access the handout PDF. Leadership has so many definitions and so many different approaches. But one of the biggest issues with leadership in education is that none of those definitions or approaches is being taught in our school systems, at least not to their full extent. Leadership is often categorized as a soft skill, but it is actually one of the hardest skills to master. So, providing students with opportunities to not only observe leadership, but also the opportunity to be the leader is key in their success for their future. Especially because leadership doesn't have a cap on when it can be taught. Children of all ages can start learning how to be a leader today.
What is the importance of the school's job, I guess, in helping prepare you for the future? Meaning, specifically in this case, leadership skills. How important is it for your high school to help develop your leadership skills?
I think leadership, people think leadership, they think of like someone holding a position in leadership. I think that's probably the most broad knowledge when we think about leadership. And I think it's the school's job to break that down for us. Leadership is inspiring others. Leadership is standing up for your peers, even if you don't really know that person. Leadership is taking on responsibility and being honest and delivering things on time when you say you will, holding yourself to your own word. Leadership is so many moving parts, so many different things. And I think those get lost and maybe are even covered up with this myth of what leadership really is. So I think we want to take a page from Mythbusters maybe and just kind of like, bust the myth that leadership is just a role that you hold or a position. Leadership is something you take on. I think, true leadership is a choice. It's not any position or role that you're given.
That's awesome. Mary Catherine, you want to add to that?
Yes. I think that the point Janaea took by saying, or by starting with leadership isn't a position, it's, just something that you do. I think that's really important. I think that every school should start there. I think that maybe more so than positioning or responsibilities pertaining to other people, I think that schools would do well to start with leadership of self. Start with, like we mentioned before, time management, planning, truthfulness, simple things that think people would know, but you can't assume that every person is taught that. You can't assume that every person has that foundation. And I think that in high school, as a preparation to go out into, like they say, the real world, I think that our schools should definitely take that on as something just as important as our core curriculum.
Great. All right. You want to add anything before I start peppering you guys with individual questions?
Yeah, I do. I have one last thing, and it was the first thing I was going to say when I got the chance. If we are not doing it in the schools, where are we doing it? I want to say that we're doing it at home, but do we really have the connections at home in our households to actually develop our students' leadership?
So before we jumped fully into the innovation decision process of adopting more leadership opportunities into education, I wanted us to hear from students now and how they view the importance of leadership
How
in their
important
education.
is it for
And
your
all
high
three
school
students made
to
great points,
help
but I
develop
think
your
the
leadership
biggest
skills?
takeaway was from
I
our
think
last
leadership,
student.
people think
If
leadership
they
to think
aren't
of like
receiving the
someone
fundamentals of
holding
leadership from
a
school,
position in leadership.
where
I
will
think
they
that's
get the resources
probably the most
to
broad
develop the leadership skills?
knowledge when we think about.
So now that we've identified why leadership programs and skills are fundamental to our students, I wanted us to be able to understand the innovation decision process. When someone is going through the innovation decision process, they go through 5 major channels, which are knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. In our case, we are hoping educational school systems adopt more focus on leadership opportunities. And in order to do so, the systems must go through the innovation decision process. They'll first have to learn about what leadership programs and opportunities can do for their students. And giving schools the communication and resources they need to understand that adolescent leaders are more likely to take bigger positions as adults with leadership skills. It's also important to communicate that leadership skills developed early on can have a positive impact on the student's future, which is key to helping educational systems create that positive attitude toward leadership programs, like student government or extracurricular programs like 4-H and FFA can benefit for their student population. Once these educational systems have formed their attitude on if a leadership program or resource is fundamental and compatible, then that is when they can choose to adopt and implement the idea of leadership programs into their own school. I want to highlight the most important characteristic of perceived innovation, which is the relative advantage that an innovation has to them. In our case, the relative advantage almost hits 2 birds with 1 stone. Districts try to achieve high graduation rates and provide programs to not only better their reputation for academics, but also the students in their school system. Adopting leadership programs not only helps the students in these schools, but it can also provide the schools by attaining their goal of being a tenacious and renowned educational system. I wanted to also highlight one of the most important things to keep in mind when trying to get an educational system to realize the relative advantage and to implement a leadership program successfully. This is communicating that educational systems are one of the biggest change agents in these students' lives. It is the school's job to prepare these students for their future and what it might entail. They are the main communication link as a resource system to students. This is where our students are learning the most. Therefore, it is their role to help establish and develop a need for change in student skills and provide them with the resources and the opportunities to do so. Now, let's take a moment to hear from Rick Fernandez, the lead Each Learn 360 founder, Randy York David, and Marlin ISD Superintendent Daryl Harrison, and learn about their take on the impact schools have on leadership resources for students.
I love operations, but when it comes down to it, it's about that level of instruction for our children, and it's everything that we're doing, helping them grow and maximize and shift their potential into performance.
It's admirable, and I could not agree with you more. If I were in your shoes, that would absolutely, those would be my expectations as well. We're a very small organization born out of the pandemic, and if we aren't helping schools, school districts, if we aren't helping those systems get results for kids, then we're not
Correct.
we're not in the right business. We're not doing what we need to do for our heart and to feed our soul and our ignite our passion, because that's the whole point of of this work, is so that again, all kids deserve opportunities for exciting futures.
Yes.
And choice in what that can look like for them. And
It is our obligation. It truly is to provide them with the choices that they can make for their own lives to be productive members of this society instead of permanent second-class citizens.
Yeah.
See, things like that I say, oh, I can't believe you said it. Well, I'll say it again. If we do not get it right in schools, we are going to put children on a path that we put them on to be permanent second-class citizens. And more often than not, they look like Rick and I.
It's heartbreaking. Yeah. You're right. It's heartbreaking. And it's got to stop. And it's.
As you
I love
heard,
operations,
Dr.
but when it comes down to it, it's about that level of instruction for our children, and it's everything that we're doing, helping them grow and maximize and shift their potential into performance.
It's admirable, and I could not agree with you more. If I were in your shoes, that would absolutely, those would be my expectations as well. We're a very small organization born out of the pandemic, and
in conclusion, the need to adopt more leadership opportunities in our educational systems is essential in helping students prosper with their future careers. We must remember that adopting these leadership programs is one of our duties as a change agent and advocate for the success of our students. At the end of today, the main resource that I want you guys to take away is actually the LTL 360 video that we just watched. You can find it on YouTube, and I highly, highly encourage that you actually listen to all of it. It's about a 30-minute video, but both Dr. Henson and Miss Wendy make extremely important points to help with the adoption and implementation of leadership opportunities within our educational systems. And the biggest part of change is the effort that we need to put into it. So now it's time to ask yourself, what will you do as an educational leadership change agent? Are you going to help improve the future and skills and opportunities for these students that are in our educational systems today? Are you going to be a part of their bigger picture? Overall, these were all of the resources that I've used today. So if you want to go and dive deeper into anything that we use from Dr. Rogers, I highly suggest that you do so, especially to understand the adoption of an innovation. Again, I also highly suggest that you listen to the LTL video that's on YouTube with Dr. Henson and Wendy. They're great points that can help us with adopting more leadership opportunities. Thank you for listening today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Thanks and Gigum.